everybody? It's Derek, a.k.a. Mr. Shred with Masters of Shred, your #1 daily source for all your daily Shredtacular content. And I am proud to say that we have partnered up with the Innovators of Wah, the mighty Morley, to bring you a brand new, epically Shredtacular season of Talking Shred. And to kick things off, our first guest, he is not a stranger. Hot off the release of the brand new Shredsational KXM album, Circle of Dolls. Give it up for Mr. Scary himself, the Mighty George Lynch. George Lynch, give it up. Not from where I was sitting. That was pretty incredible. All right, so let's just get right into it. Thank you for being here. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for bringing your rig here. Do I like that? Not only do I like that, but all 108,000 followers on Masters of Shred, they loved it.
I mean, you see,
I can tell.
Amazing players all day long. So that's what you do.
Yeah, but they get it from you, most of them, man. You're a legend at what you do. If it wasn't for you, some of these guys would not be here. The majority of them wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for you. See that? I lay it on thick. Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for taking the time out for being here. Masters of Shred, we teamed up with Morley, and you have a big show tonight with Lynch Mob at the Arcada. You're getting ready to blow the roof off that place. Tell us a little bit about your rig, because you just got in here last night. So what kind of rig are you working with?
68 plexi.
Okay.
50 watt 68 plexi. This is the best one I've run across in all the years that I've been playing. Been playing Marshall pretty much on and off all my life, right? And so this is my #1 head. I take it with me everywhere. I've got a couple others that are real close, a couple Marshalls and Parks that are real close, but this right now, the last, I'd say 3 or 4 years has been my go-to. It's just, these are, it's so, Marshalls are so, old amps are so wonderful because, they were using radio spares and just kind of whatever they could grab off the shelves back then. So you never know what you're going to get. So all the amps were a little bit different, and they've all aged differently and everything. So sometimes there's just no way of knowing why they sound the way they do, and you just got to find one that works for you. So this one for me is my baby. A gentleman here who I just met brought down one of Eric Johnson's old cabinets, so thank you very much. Yeah, incredible. So you can't beat an old metal-handled Marshall basket weave. So we've got that, and we're running the effects, which is just delay. I've got two old Roland SD E3000s.
I saw those earlier.
Yeah, from the 80s.
Yep.
That's what I used to use in the 80s too. So they're just a great delay. I mean, they're kind of lo-fi now by today's standards, and I think that's why they sound so musical to me. I think I don't know. I'm not sure why, but I really like those, and running those through a Matrix power amp, just because they're practical for on the road. Because I fly with all this stuff, and I can't bring a real tube power amp, which I would prefer. But anyways. It works, sounds good. It's just the delay. And I'm running two different delays on either side of my dry.
Okay, nice. Okay.
And then up front, I've got my Morley Dragon, which is the smaller version now. They've got the mini Dragon. And Phase 90, an old Phase 90, block logo. I've got script logos as well. This is a Klon Centaur. Exactly the same as the gold one. Circuit-wise, it's just they don't have the horse on it. So they're less money. And then a Malaysian ship Tube Screamer, which I'm a big fan of, the Malaysian ship versus the, I don't like the Texas Instruments chip at all, the dual op, but some people are way into the JRC chip,
right.
Which some of the JRC chips can sound great, but I've found that Malaysian chips always sound great. So that's
right.
just, so.
And this is George Lynch's sound right here. And the rest come from the fingers and the skills, right?
Yeah,
All
a
the
little
years.
bit of the brain, a little bit of plagiarizing, a little bit of smoke and mirrors.
Nothing wrong with that, right?
Yeah, yeah. But
No.
don't tell anybody. We're
Oh,
not
okay.
we're not
This is
recording
for the
this.
record. Let's not
Okay.
get that out there.
Red
So-
light's not on, so.
Let's talk a little bit about the new KXM album, Circle
Yeah.
of Dolls.
Right.
So you kind of float between different ESPs. I've seen you play Telecasters, sometimes Les Pauls, a lot of vintage gear. Your guitar arsenal is epic to say the least. But what were some of the main guitars you used on this new album by KXM?
Also, but you know.
Well, for Shred, you may be.
Yeah. Well, you know, I look at everything like tools in a tool belt, you know, and you got to have the right tools for everything, especially in the studio.
Right.
So I'm sort of infamous for, you know, when I show up, you know, KXM recording day, you know, everybody else kind of shows up with a, you know, a gig bag and a couple other things, you know, pulled out of the trunk of their car. I show up with a semi, well, not a semi, but, you know, like a U-Haul,
Right.
you know, with a whole truck full of stuff, you know, because I got to have everything. I don't have enough time to plug everything in, but I just feel like, okay, now I have all this stuff. This is when I need to use it. This is why I have it. So I bring everything down and I set it all up, spend all day setting it up, you know, or half a day, and plugging into probably 3 or 4 things, you know, at the end of the day. But,
Right.
you know.
Is there any guitar you use more than any other on the track?
I've got a Les Paul that ESP built for me, which is a clone of a 58 that they loaned me in the 80s that I used on the Guitar Bible instructional video. So there's a little demo in there of me playing a Strat and a Les Paul. That's like a 62 Strat and a whatever Strat it was, and then that 58 Les Paul. And they go, well, we can't give you the Les Paul, but we'll clone it. And it took them a year, and they built it out of, you know, with hide glue and old Kalamazoo wood and everything. And so I used that Les Paul live and in the studio. So that's my beefier tone. Also used the Tiger and Kamikaze and things like that. And then for the more chimey tone or just a little sparkle on top, I'll use my ESP Telly with the reverse pickup. So
Right.
the pickup goes, you know, treble side, it's in a different direction, right? So it's less trebly.
Right.
And
And you also use your signature Morley Wah on that as well, right? You can hear it because it's so prominent, it's so dominant. The tone you get out of this, the bottom end.
That was kind of the deal with this, was we wanted to do that, for lack of a better, you know, explanation, the Schenker notched wah deal, you know.
Right.
And I found the best way to use that for me is when just a little, actually we should include this instruction in the pedal, is it works best when you go into the lower input channel on the amp. You know, everybody by default usually goes into the high input
Right.
channel, like your top right
Right.
input, you know. When you're using this kind of setup with the notch feature with some overdrive, it's better to go in to a lower input channel, even, you know, the bottom right, and then crank your treble down. So your treble and your presence, take that all down. And I learned that from touring with Schenker.
Really?
We did 2 tours with Schenker, and it was very sweet to tour with, and he would let us do sound checks and, you know, and everything, and he was really cool. And I'd go up and I just, you know, I'm a huge fan. I'd go up and check out his whole rig, and that's how he had his rig set up. It really shocked me, and I was like, that's how he does that. So it's kind of a trick, you know, to get that tone. So then when you get the treble on the wah pedal,
Yeah.
it's not kind of it's not shrill, you know. It's
Right.
kind of in that hollow mid. And the guitar lives in the mid range, so
Right.
you want that. So,
Wow, so
anyway.
that's pretty good to know. Now you heard it from the source. So
Well, I'm not actually the source. I'm the
Well.
second person. You have to actually talk to Michael.
that's your signature model on the floor, though.
Right,
So,
but I'm just
I'll
plagiarizing
take your
Michael
word over
Schenker.
it.
So.
Okay, nothing wrong with that, though.
Yeah.
So we're speaking of gear. There's something I've been thinking about quite a bit. It seems like these preamp module cartridges are taking the world by storm. And if I am right on this, memory serves me correctly, someone was doing this probably over 10 years ago now with a brand called Randall. You know, it's tough to remember. Maybe you can help me out with that.
Well, that was the first Lynchbox series with Randall, which is probably 12 years ago, if not more. Yeah, and we had the modular design, and so each, you know, it all shared a common power section. And the idea of the modules was each module would mimic, you know, some different iconic amplifier.
Right.
for instance, or we'd have artists with signature modules to mimic their rigs. So you want an AC30, you've got an AC30 module, and you want a Plexi, you've got a Plexi module, and those kinds of things.
And that was the Lynch box, right?
It was called Lynch box, yeah.
Those are incredible. If you can find one of those, killer amps. Do you still have one of those?
Yeah. Oh, I do. I have a really hyper built one that was modified by Jaded Faith. It was a company that does really intensive mods on the modules and the power sections as well. And it's very, very effective, and it really improves them and makes them. One of the problems we had with those early Lynch boxes were they weren't roadworthy. They would fall apart on the road, and I couldn't find people to fix them on the road, so I'd have to take 4 or 5 of them out with me just to have them so I could keep them working, you know. And so the Jaded Faith guys went in and rebuilt everything, and you know, new Mars transformers, and just everything on it is rebuilt. I mean, from the ground up.
You still got it, but that's interesting to know. I
use it a lot, actually. It's a great sounding amp.
Yeah, so if you find one of those, which they're out there, maybe think about snagging one of those too.
Boat anchors. They weigh like 100 pounds, so not real practical for moving them around. But
but jam room, something like that, leave it in there.
Yeah, for
and cave.
It's a great studio amp because you know that's the whole trick. You know, well, we sort of got the idea initially was from I don't know if you remember the Seymour Duncan convertible amps.
Yes.
And that was from, I think early 90s or maybe the 80s.
Yeah. I actually, I now collect old vintage magazines of Guitar Player and Guitar World. I saw that ad recently. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
What a strange amp.
You don't hear about that anymore. No one talks about that.
You know, and I've just remembered, we just brought that up. I used that on the Interlock and Key record.
No kidding.
I used the convertible. I had one.
Well, we're about to get to that because you just mentioned something that one of our followers put up that was a really great question. So let's hold on to that for a second. One thing I want to talk about, you actually had a small bout with pneumonia. Glad to see you're better, okay? Because you know we all put the posts out there, get better. But you had it led to canceling some dates. One of which was a reunion with Dokken at M3, that festival. I know. So, has there been talk about maybe making up that date?
Oh, we're gonna make up for it big time. Yeah. I'm not supposed to say anything. So, but next year.
Cover your ears right now.
Next year, yeah, we're gonna do something.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, no, but not what you think. No, I'm gonna. I'm gonna.
we don't want you to say
no, I'm
anything.
gonna do some different landscaping on my front yard. Did you think I was talking about Dokken reunion?
Oh, okay,
no, you know where the boulders are, and I'm gonna put some cactuses. I'm
Okay.
kidding.
Okay.
No, we're gonna do something, but it's gonna be Dokken and Lynch Mob together, going out, and then at the end of the night, I'm gonna go out. Me and Don are gonna go out and, you know, do a few old Dokken songs together.
That's gonna be extremely exciting.
Yeah.
Looking forward to that.
I'm
Very
very
cool.
excited.
Very cool. And it seems like I want to run this by because a lot of fellow people on the page, followers, friends, have brought this up to me. I think you would agree with me that the guitar landscape for instrumentalists has somewhat changed over the past 5 years, and it seems like there's a bigger platform for guys like Andy James, Angel Vivaldi, Jackie Vincent, Nita Strauss to get out there, do instrumental albums, almost like where it was with Shrapnel back in the day, where you could be promoted and have a career doing this. Have you considered doing instrumentals?
Absolutely. I mean, I have some trepidation about it because of the glut of insane players due to guys like you, who are just making it hard for old guys like me to keep up. But no, I'm just kidding. But I mean, I look at all those Instagram guys, and I'm just so, my mind is just blown every day. You know, and it's so beautiful because a lot of it is, they're not doing what they did in the late 80s and early 90s and just going hyperspeed shred. They do that too, but they've gone back to bebop and, like, you know, jazz and you know, Wes Montgomery stuff and Joe Pass stuff, and just like really heavy, like, you know, playing over changes and doing really beautiful, like even traditional music, you know. And I just like, wow, these guys are. And on top of that, you know, the Tosin Obasi, you know, multi-string, multi-tapping, two-handed, all that stuff too, and putting it all together and coming up with hybrid new stuff, which is fascinating to me.
It's very diverse, but I also think that a big part of this has to deal with social media, because for this, maybe players like that existed 25 years ago in that whole scene, but they're in, some other foreign country, they don't have the accessibility, the platform we have here, they're never going to know about them. I think Instagram has changed the game tremendously for guitar players.
Well, finger pickers have always been around, obviously. Right. So, and flat pickers and all that. But, now you're seeing a lot more of them and just, oof. It's just, and I've been trying to do the finger thing. I can't really do it. I do a fake finger thing, but, and that's just, me trying to be Jeff Beck, because I think we all just want to be Jeff Beck when we grow up. But, somebody gave me some crap about it the other day. They got on Instagram. They go, "I hate it when you try to play with your fingers because you're not really a finger picker." I go, "I know, but I'm trying."
But you can play whatever you want. It still sounds great,
Yeah.
I mean, you're supposed to copy someone completely, right? We already talked about plagiarism. You shouldn't copy completely. You gotta make it your own.
Well, let's say I was able to really be, good at it and play with, 3 or 4 fingers, and do it properly.
Right.
Well, then I would sound like a traditionalist, and I would be doing it but sounding like other people.
Right.
But because I do it wrong, it's just kind of this strange thing that happens. It's not that it's wrong. It's just different.
Yep.
So my advice to you kids out there: do it wrong.
See that?
Just play wrong.
And you'll play like you. It'll be you, right? You have your own character to it. So that works. So I'm going to go way back now, but really not too far, to an epic moment that I think a lot of people remember and appreciate. It was about 34, 35, 36 years ago. 40 of the greatest musicians at metal and rock and roll got together for a great cause. He's already on to it. Yep, to famine relief in Africa, ran by Ronnie James Dio. And this guy did 2 insane solos on that track called Stars. And you were alongside Brad Gillis, Yngwie Malmsteen, Vivian Campbell, Neil Schon. The list goes on and on. Legends. What were some of the fondest memories you have from that experience in that session at that studio A&M recording?
Yeah, we're at A&M before it became Henson.
Right.
Well, it was a line outside of in the outdoor, kind of patio area, going into the room, and everybody kind of was like, it was almost like waiting at the DMV, Oh, except that every fucking guitar, like if you wanted to get rid of all your guitar competition, you just plant a bomb there, and he would have been like the only guy left and would have won by default. But everybody was scared of Yngwie, rightly so. He was just emerging at the time, and that I think performance really cemented him into the history books, and his place in the hierarchy was established, I think, after that, pretty concretely. But so I noticed that when everybody went in, everybody was kind of chasing Yngwie, so everybody was playing faster than they normally do, but uncomfortably so. Kind of frenetic and nervously, and I don't want to name it. I mean, I was doing it too, but it's just like it was hard to be yourself because this guy's shadow was cast such a large shadow. So.
Well, it was very distinguishable sound, but so was yours. Your solo, when you hear it, it's George Lynch. There were some other players on there that when they soloed, I had to go watch the video again to see who it was playing. But I knew George Lynch, I knew Yngwie Malmsteen. So I was like, okay, I guess it's good for me.
It was a problem listening to the record for me and trying to differentiate the different players. It seemed like they all just kind of ran together, except for Yngwie. But when you watch the video, it was great because you could. It was also a different mix and a different edit on the video. It's not the same as the record. It's on the record. It's just. When are they switch? You can't tell when they're switching between one guitar player and another. It's just kind of a mess.
Right.
But on the video, it's actually much more pleasant, where you can kind of give, the guy has room to breathe. And
exactly. And you know what? I take one of the comments I said back. I knew it was you when you played. I knew it was Yngwie, and I knew it was Brad Gillis because his whammy bar usage was like insane. So you knew it was immediately him off the bat. So
he's got that unique.
And
he does. I don't know what he does. He pulls back on her, does the flicker and all that.
Yeah. Were you nervous when you laid down your solos?
It was a long time ago. I don't think I was very nervous, actually.
No,
I don't know why.
No.
My nervousness went away with this whole playing in front of people thing pretty early on. I was petrified at first when I first went out, like in the early 80s, and played big shows. My first big gig I had when I was a kid was at the Southgate community center, and it was a battle of the bands, and my parents and all my friends were there. There was probably 500 people there. They opened up the curtains, and I completely froze. And I was playing with these pro guys in town, and I was supposed to be this hotshot kid, and I was like 15 or something. And everything went out of I couldn't even think of what to play. And they just played without me, and they closed the curtain, and they fired me, and I was all, my friends and family were all kind of ashamed of me. You know, I mean, it was just really that moment.
So how did you get over the fear of playing on stage? Just a lot of gigs over time?
Well, a lot of gigs over time, but well, at first when I would go out with Dokken, we'd play, you know, I think some of our first big shows were arena shows. And that was pretty frightening. It's like, you know, the guys bring you up and they put you up the stairs and it's dark and there's all the lighters and it's like, okay, there's 18,000 people out there.
So it's just like the Rockstar movie with Mark Wahlberg, right? The big song Staircase.
I remember that movie. But yeah, I can imagine. So it was, yeah, it was your heart's in your mouth and it's just like you're so scared that you can barely play. So what I remember happening sometimes is I would overplay and I would get to the point where I'd almost hyperventilate and I would put myself in these crazy physical positions on stage where I was just trying to project in such a huge way, you know, just on my knees, laying back, you know, hands in the air. And I would get stuck in positions sometimes on stage with Spinal Tap where they'd have to, like, I couldn't get off the ground, you know. It was just like, help, I need some help over here, help over here. Wow. You know, things like that, silly stuff. And then Jeff and I would start listening every night to the board tapes and listening, which is very critical listening, you know, because you're just hearing coming right out of the mics. You're not even hearing the room. So if you make a mistake, it's very glaring. And we would get in the back of the bus and we'd listen every night and we started tearing it apart and we go, sounds like you're rocking out too much here, dude, and not paying attention to what you're playing. And so we're like, oh boy. So I started paying attention. And once I started paying attention to what I'm doing here and not paying attention to what's going on out there and stopped posing as much, I relaxed and started breathing and just going inside myself and losing track of space and time and just being one with whatever I was playing in my instrument. Yeah. And that helped a lot. And I'm sure just
players right there. That's the way to do it. And we got a segment we did, I told you about. It's called Ask George. You throw out the best questions you got. We're gonna, yeah.
Oh, ask with a K. Oh. Okay.
Ask. Oh yes. Yeah. That's a different one we're talking about there. And
different meaning.
Right. Well, this one's a little more PG, but we're gonna make it best questions they get asked. So we're gonna go real quickly through this. Give me some good answers, whatever answer you got, and we'll see how it is. So I handpicked these. We're going to give some shout-outs to. This one's from my fellow brother in Shred at X-Men Rocks. And he wanted to know, what was your greatest aha moment while learning and studying the guitar? Maybe that light bulb moment where it went off. Oh, I got this. Now this makes sense.
The first thing that comes to mind is when I decided I need to recalibrate and bump my game up. And I was in a huge rut in late 80s, early 90s. And I answered an ad or looked in the paper and found a guitar teacher and showed up at his apartment. His name was Mark Thompson. And, you know, didn't say I was anybody, anything or anything. I didn't want to be anybody. I just wanted to learn from somebody else. And after spending time with him, that was really my, I guess, I don't know if you would call it an aha moment, but it transformed my playing. You know, just the discipline. Right. And I learned I mean, that's common sense, but I never really practiced, you know, had the discipline like like he forced me to have. And that made a gigantic difference in my playing. And I learned, you know, I always thought, well, I'm just an off the cuff, off the top of my head, tone dependent kind of guy, and I'll always be that guy. And then when I actually applied myself, you know, hours a day with, you know, alternate and rudimentary picking, going on through all these exercises, my playing, you know, I mean, I got twice as good. You know, I just felt like really confident, like I could play anything I wanted to, inside and outside myself, and it was a great feeling, and that's a lesson I have to keep reminding myself of because I'm not naturally like that, you know.
Wow, that's pretty incredible. You can always learn, I guess, in a way, right? Even if you're George Lynch, you can always learn something.
Yeah, there's a balance between the hard work, discipline thing and the spontaneity thing. You know, right. There's not really any such thing as being one pure genotype or you know, right brain, left brain. It's a little bit of both, you know.
Exactly.
For all of us, I think. You know.
Well, that's great. I hope that helped out. X-Men Rocks. That was a great answer. So thank you for shedding some light on that. Well, he's getting a shred out.
Like a T-shirt or something?
Probably work something like that out. Always take care of him. He's great. So here's a great question from James Edwards at James Bayo 1. Hopefully I got that right, your last name, man. He wants you to tell us about the legend of the SIR Studio Instrument Rentals stock number 39 amp that you used. Yeah, that supposedly Slash, after you used on the first leg of Under Lock and Key, you returned it and Slash got it and recorded Appetite for Destruction on it, and then it ended up getting kept by Slash. You didn't get returned or something like that, and then it got stolen and got returned. But was there really that amp, that ultra modded one that you try to get the sound of?
Yeah, this has actually happened to me and probably other people quite a bit. Where you show up at a rehearsal place, you know, in New York or LA or somewhere, or a studio, and they have some instrument there or an amplifier that's just insane, right? And just like, wait a minute, this is better than everything I own. I got to own this. I got to buy it from you. And they never sell this stuff, you know. I mean, very rarely, you know. Right. So I tried like hell to buy it off of them, and they just no, we don't sell. So, you know, and in retrospect, I should have. Yeah, well, what I ended up doing was renting something like that for years. So you pay, you know, whatever X amount of dollars per day or week for 2 years. You know what you end up spending for this thing? And then you give it back and you made it valuable, and they can sell it to some other fool for $25,000 because you made it famous.
Right, exactly.
Which is exactly what happened with the purple Marshall that I had, which is my other favorite Marshall from that era.
Wow.
But it was Aspen Pittman's, which just recently passed. So.
I hear that. And you also had the RG100. I think it was the RG100 Randalls. I say it wrong. The RH. Gosh, what's the name for it?
RG100, yeah.
It's also a Dimebag plate too. Right?
Yes. Well, we used to tour a lot with those guys. We used to do all the Cardi circuit in Texas, and this was when Dimebag was, you know, he's more of a Eddie hair shred guy. Right. He was great though, you know, and he was like, but they didn't have Phil.
Okay, right.
They had another singer, and they were a little more hair, like we all were back then. Right. And but he wasn't using the Randalls, and we toured. We had the Randalls, and I think that's when he picked up on them. And a number of other people used them, and I still have one, and they're great. They really are great, but they're unique. Yeah, and they're kind of they're legacy solid state, but they're like they're a high quality solid state, if there's such a thing.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it really has a unique sound that's very. You remember when we designed it, Gary Sunda and I at Randall, we'd put my favorite 50-watt plexi or metal panel Marshalls up on the scope, and he would just mimic the scope of the tonal scope.
Wow.
And you know, it's never going to be tube. It's going to be different. It wasn't worse or better than. It was just different, but it's just a really unique sound. So that was Tooth and Nail. Tooth and Nail was all that.
What's that amp? And you can get great deals on those for like $150 a head. I've seen. They're like 600. Yeah, just something like that, right?
Too expensive. Don't buy them.
Absolutely.
I'm going to corner the market. I'm going to be like the Hunt brothers of RG100s.
Exactly. So next question comes from Joe Franklin. This is a great question. At Joe Franklin, thanks for submitting this. He wants to know, what about a Tungus Grump reunion?
Well, first of all, that would be impossible because the bass player is no longer with us, Mondo, so as of a couple of years ago.
Joe should have known that, but before he submitted that question, he blew it.
And Steve Moore, I still talk to, is a drummer. He was my best friend, and you know, when we were kids, and you know, we made all our plans to be the world's biggest band and conquer the universe and all that stuff. Drawing pictures of our imaginary band with our outfits and practicing in the garage. And
well, sometimes it just starts with a really good name. A name like that.
Yeah. Well, we were all stoners back then, so you know how you have all these stoner bands now, you know, like Black Mountain, Fu Manchu, or whatever. And I love all that stuff. But dude, that's what we were. I mean, we were a stoner band, and I realized in recent years that I still am that. You know, I listen to my music, I was just like, wait a minute, that's really what I'm shooting for. You know, it's a full circle thing.
Right.
But, you know, we just smoked pot and had long hair, and this was in the, you know, early 70s, and that's what the world was like back then, you know.
No, absolutely.
You know.
So, okay, well, I got your answer for that. This one comes from Joel Dominguez, which is at Storm_Shredder. He wants to know, how was it playing and recording with Tony McAlpine on this Shred opus, Tears of Sahara and The Vision? Which you were on both of those. Those were instrumental tracks.
Tears of Sahara came out better than The Vision. It was, you know, kind of was just thrown into the den of wolves, you know, because I didn't really know what I was getting into. So I agreed to do it because my manager at the time asked me to, and so I went up to Novato, in the wine country up in the hills there, the orchards and everything, where Varney's studio was. And I didn't know anything about it, and I showed up, and there was this band there, but they were all kind of dirty and famished, and were working in the orchards picking fruit and stuff. So as Varney, I guess what he did was he'd make his bands work in the orchards, and that's how they would sort of pay their rent, I guess, so to speak. I'm not sure the arrangement they had, but anyways, these guys would be toiling in the fields all day, then have to go in and record. But he'd maybe like 18 hours a day. It was like indentured servitude, and it was Racer X. I found out later.
Really?
Yeah. So Scott Travis, the big tall drummer guy, and he's in Judas Priest. I remember seeing him there, and I forget who else, but anyways, it was all those guys. Boulay?
Yes.
Yeah, he was there. He was so it's this like big barn thing that they built a studio, and then a couple of houses where they would sleep. They had cots and stuff, and then
it's like a shred camp.
Yeah, but you have to work. It was like a working shred camp.
Yeah, shred in the fields and then shred on guitar.
Who's who? They go, well, Varney's coming. I go, who's this Varney guy? They go, well, yeah, he's the kind of the head, the slave owner.
Yeah.
So he's coming. So we see this cloud of dust coming down this dirt road, and they go, oh, here he comes. They get all scared and nervous and go scurry off into the orchards, and he'd drive up in this gold Mercedes and get out, and then he would have these boxes of like stale cookies and food.
Only the best.
Yeah, for the guys, and the guys would all come out, because they were hungry, right? Because they've been working all day, and he would just throw it down on the ground, pull it out of his trunk and throw it on the ground. Oh. And it was insane. I was like, is this real or what? And so this.
I'm actually debating this is a real story right now. Is this true?
Yes, this is true. This is how Shrapnel built his empire. Yeah.
He's a smart man. He's a businessman.
Yes. So,
got to put the cookies on the floor.
So I try. Look, it's not my business. I'm just here to do what I'm here to do. So I just shut my eyes and ears. I go in and try to focus and find out that I didn't know that this guy Varney was the producer, but because he just sat there and he was really funny. But he would just tell jokes, and he would tell anecdotes and stories, and I'm like, I would really like to get to work, because we couldn't get anything done because this guy just kept cracking jokes, which were very funny jokes, but it's just like, so he left for a second, and I just asked the engineer and Tony, I said, hey, listen, can we get rid of that guy because we can't get anything done? So I ended up kicking I didn't know he was the producer, but we kicked him out. He was not allowed back in the studio, and then we got it done. We did the Tears, the Vision and Tears.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then let's see, I did a record called Furious George with him, which is covers, all covers. ZZ Top, Zeppelin, Robin Trower, Hendrix, that kind of stuff. And then I had another record called Souls of We that was on his label.
Yes.
With London LeGrand. Anyways.
You're okay, definitely familiar. Well, that was an incredible answer. More than I think you were going for, what you were expecting. So, question, here we are past mid 2019. What does the rest of the year hold for George Lynch? Anything coming up?
Yeah. Right now, we're kind of in the trenches with a new Lynch Mob record. So we've got, like about 15 songs on the board. It pretty much done with, and we're going to write a couple more next week. And just kind of starting to get the vocals figured out, and getting the drums. Jimmy's starting to get the drums down on it, and most of the guitars are done. All the solos are pretty much done, except for like 2. So we're getting pretty close to that. Then I switch over to another 2 records that I'm working on. One is called, it's a project I've been working on for like 6 years or so, with Tommy Victor from Prong and a programmer, mixer, engineer guy named Hayes, who's worked with a lot of kind of industrial bands and stuff. And it's a real heavy but trippy record. It's called The Banishment. So we're going to try to finish that up. We also got a gentleman called Devix on vocals, very kind of ministry, comes from that ministry camp. Yeah, it's really cool. I always love that kind of music, but to me, it's like, God, I'd love to hear this kind of stuff, but with me in it. It's all about me. No, I'm just kidding. But I really think that would be an interesting thing to hear. The kind of the guitar that I imagine being over that. You never hear that's always like plug it into a Rockman and just get some chords. But how about just doing something that's bigger? Like if Eddie was in 9 Inch Nails. That's what I want to do. So I just did that.
Wow, and I gotta tell you, just taking a step back from this, you really can understand and interpret this, that you just keep going. Every year you have new projects that are pretty different from each other, sound incredible, their own style, distinctiveness. How do you keep coming up with ideas like this?
I don't know. I mean, I sit down and, I sit down and it
just comes out.
I used to have writer's block. I mean, it was a thing that most creative people have to deal with at some point in their life.
Are you your own worst critic?
No, it was just that sometimes the stuff wouldn't flow and it wouldn't happen. Okay. And that has not happened to me in decades now. So now I can just, as long as it's there, I'm going to take advantage of it, you know, while the tap's flowing, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I just did another, so we're working on the Banishment record. It'll be out next year, I think, on Sony. Then we've got, we just did a video and photo shoot for that. And then we've got this wonderful vocalist named Devix. He actually plays Richard Ramirez in the Night Stalker TV show. Yeah.
Oh, you're kidding.
Yeah, he's a trippy, wonderful, super smart guy. He's just so heavy and so dark. It's just perfect match for the music. So he's like this new generation kind of ministry guy. You know,
Wow.
he's just really
Wow.
insane. I'm so.
This is what I'm talking about. This constant freshness from you. Nothing repeats.
Well, so, you know, people, I'm surrounding myself, and I'm fortunate enough to play with other people. So
Right.
I'm able to, you know, it's like the ultraphonics thing, you know, and the you know, kind of other projects I do. You know, I just feed off other people, and I sort of, it's like the Zelig effect. Have you ever seen that Woody Allen movie Zelig, where it's a faux documentary where he's this, you know, he becomes a chameleon. So wherever he hangs around, he sort of becomes that. So if he hangs around, a surgeon, he'll actually go in an operating room and pretend but really do surgery. Or a politician, he becomes a politician and he's successful at it.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm a little, I call it the Zelig
like
effect,
that.
a little bit, you know, by osmosis. I sort of, you know, when I was doing Project Infidelica,
Yeah.
you know, with Angelo Moore and Pancho Tomaselli, I mean, I was completely out of my comfort zone. You know, I'm playing through a 56 Deluxe and small Fender combos, and not playing, you know, I was playing funk music and different time signatures and a horn section and theremin and keyboards and all these kinds of things I don't normally, you know, interact with very much. And it was a learning process for me. It was really challenging. It was beautiful. And like, we recorded the record all in the same time, old school to tape, you know, all playing at the same time, you know, and so forces you to think outside yourself, and, you know, increases the plasticity in your brain, and it's good for you to do as you get older and all that. So
I guess now I understand how you keep going, how you keep doing these great albums like this, and just it's amazing.
I got another one that's all done in the can. It's coming out January 1st, I think, and it's called Dirty Shirley. And it's the drummer from Evanescence, and Trevor Rocks from the bass player from David Bowie's band from back in the day, and he was in Uriah Heep.
Okay, right. Which,
and then the singer Dino from Trans-Siberian Orchestra.
Okay, wow, okay.
He's a monster. You gotta hear this record.
It's coming out next year.
Yeah, coming January 1st.
Wow.
Yeah, it's all done.
Okay.
We just did the video for it, actually.
Wow,
Yeah.
it's another project. There's 2 new projects that just broke here.
Yeah, there's other ones too, but.
Well,
whatever.
I only want you to tell me what you're comfortable with. You know, you've
stupid.
already given us a lot.
It's absolutely
so.
character, like, I mean, I'm sorry, not character, but career suicide to do this. I mean, every manager tells me this. Labels are all pissed off at me. They're like, you didn't tell us you had all these records coming out on other labels. I go, you know what, dude? I have a right to make a living, and I love making music, and I don't like, there's nothing I love more than sitting in the studio and playing my guitar and writing songs with my friends. So this is what I love to do.
Yeah.
And as long as I can keep doing it, I'm going to keep doing it. As long as I can still sell records, I'm going to keep doing it.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a bummer when I can't anymore. You know, if somebody says, oh, we're not going to let you do any more records because you did too many records.
Right. Well, I don't think that'll ever happen. I will tell you this. I think we're almost running and go because you got a busy schedule. You got to get ready to go to sound check here. So I'm going to lay it on you here. Thank you so much for being a part of this. Our first episode with Morley, Talking Shred. A very happy early birthday, by the way. This is birthday boy George Lynch right here. Well, you see, done. I'll give you one of each. You let me know the address. It's there. So thank you for tuning in.
The thing I like a lot are Eric Johnson cabinets.
Oh, yeah.
I like those original speaker ones, but whatever.
Well,
I'll take whatever.
Yeah, we'll see if we can work something out. I don't know about that. There is that one. Well, you know what? Maybe Eric has another one. Maybe he can give you directly. He would do that for you, right?
For sure.
That's what George Lynch, he would do it. So where can people follow you at?
Where can people send me the Marshall cabinets?
Yes, we need an address too. Exactly.
GeorgeLynch.com.
I don't know how email will be there.
It just came to me.
It's very creative. I'm surprised no one else took that before you did.
Yeah.
Some squatters usually do that.
Send me what?
Well, where can everybody follow you at?
Oh, yeah.
On social media.
Instagram is usually the best.
This is George Lynch official, right? Don't go for the other guy. that makes that fake account.
Yeah.
We don't like those.
Fake George Lynch guy.
Exactly. And make sure to follow Morley at Morley Pedals. You can follow me at Mr_Shred_ as long as tedious, but all the ones we're taking. And of course, follow Masters of Shred and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Subscribe to Morley's channel. And stay tuned for some more blisteringly shredtacular episodes of Talking Shred, just like the one you saw here. You want to play us out? Mm-hmm. Let's do it.